It is time for another week of NFL picks on the Bottom Line View. What's going on at football freaks? It's Mitch here, back with my straight up and spread picks for week 8 of the 2024 NFL season. A season that has been a roller coaster for picks. I hope you're doing well this year. This is the place where I break down each game. I give you my honest opinion on each game and discuss the matchups, the inner workings of the games, my opinion on the teams currently, the spreads, and much more. So if that sounds good, spike the like button and don't forget to subscribe. If you're in the chat, it means you're a member. So congratulations for being a member. Thank you for being a member. You are a part of the exclusive BLV membership. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for your support. And we will be taking your questions as well as your scores, your predictions, the people in the chat. Shout them out. We've got Caesar in the chat. We've got Salvador in the chat, who's also a patron. He says, Mitch, don't pick the Pats to cover. Smart. You're a smart man. Daniel Barry in the chat. Stephanie says, hey, Big Al. Hey, Mitch. What's up, Stephanie? Of course, we've got the one and only, the EAGLES, Eagles ambassador, Big Al Williams in the chat. Singh is in the chat as well. So last week, we were a little indecisive, and we went with some underdogs. We tried to go bold with some of our picks. Some of them worked out, like the Seahawks. Some of them didn't. And honestly, last week was probably like the straight up unluckiest week I've had of the season in terms of best bets, because there were 5 teams in the NFL last week that were up 10-0 in a game and lost. And in my best bets, I put 3 of those teams in my best bets. The Miami Dolphins, the New England Patriots, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were all up 10-0, and there were 2 other teams that did this as well. I don't recall a week in which you go up 10-0 and you lose as frequently as week 7 in the NFL. So hopefully that's not a trend. Minnesota did it as well, although I didn't bet on that game. But just saying, throwing it out there, pretty wild and wacky week in week 7 in terms of the start of games not indicating the finish. Feeling so good about the start of the game, and then at the end you're like, what did I just do to myself? So let's take a look at my picks. Last week, we went 9-5 straight up. We went 7-8 versus the spread. Again, not a great week, but not horrible. Spread record is at 56, 49-3 straight up. We're 63-43. Straight up's pointing in the right direction. But the spread, man, it's just been a little bit inconsistent and wacky. So we're looking to have a consistent week this week. I'm not going to be overlooking or overthinking these picks this week. I'm just going to be straight up going with the team that I think is better and really leaning into kind of my overall thoughts on these teams currently. So let's get to it, guys. Let's get to it. Spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're a member, make sure you say hello in the chat. I'll be checking out to see your scores in the chat. Okay, let's get started with Thursday Night Football. The Minnesota Vikings. This was actually released on Patreon. So if you're not on Patreon, link in the description. I like the Minnesota Vikings in Los Angeles, -3. Again, I said it at the top of the show. I said it less than a minute ago. I'm going with the better team. The significantly better team here is the Minnesota Vikings. I don't care if the game's on Thursday. I don't care if the game's on Friday. I don't care if the game is on Monday. I don't care if the game is on Mars. I don't care if the game is on Jupiter, bro. The Minnesota Vikings are the better football team. The Minnesota Vikings have 1 loss and it was to the Detroit Lions in a game that they led 10-0, and they led with 2 minutes left before losing by a game-winning field goal. So when you look at it like that, Minnesota has been an elite team. Now, why do I like it from a matchup standpoint? The Vikings, I think that they're going to be able to take some pressure off of Sam Darnold. We saw even the Raiders were able to run the ball against the Rams. The Rams are definitely susceptible to the run. I think Aaron Jones can have a successful day here running the ball. We might even see, because it's a short week, a little bit of Chandler and even Cam Akers in this one. But I feel like the Vikings should be able to run the ball, which I think is going to put the Rams in a bind because they do not have a significantly talented secondary. And I do not think they'll be able to cover Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison on islands, which means that they're going to have to kind of give up and concede the run. And if they do decide to try to stop the run, I think they're going to give up explosives. Sam Darnold has thrown the ball well. Went back, watched the Lions and Vikings. I actually felt like that game was definitely a game that the Vikings could have won. I thought that after the fact, everyone was kind of talking about Jared Goff, as they should, and the Lions and winning that game. But I felt that was very, very competitive, and I felt like it could have went either way. And the Vikings defense did sort of play better towards the third, fourth quarter until that game-winning drive. It was really just the second quarter where the Lions kind of exploded. But we've seen this Vikings defense. They've been one of the best in football. And don't let the Cooper Kupp hype get out of hand here, right? The Rams' offensive line has been pretty lousy the entire season. Their run game's been inconsistent, and the Vikings have a very good run defense. Flores has played or coached against Sean McVay a couple of times, and he's dismantled him and embarrassed him multiple times, including a Super Bowl. And I do think that Flores has the pieces here to slow down this Rams offense. Stafford, in my opinion, has been a little bit turnover prone. He hasn't exactly played his best football. He's been a little antsy, and perhaps Cooper Kupp coming back will slow him down and make him more comfortable. But I think the Rams' approach to being successful in this game will be by throwing the ball a lot, and I think that's ultimately going to lead to probably a tipped interception, a strip sack fumble, a big explosive play for the Vikings defense, because this is the best defense, in my opinion, in football when it comes to, punching the ball out, getting an interception, getting a negative play. They're very good at that, and that can turn the tide of this game into what I could see being a potential blowout. So I'm not saying the Rams can't be competitive here. I think their best approach would be to just trust their best player in Stafford, their other best player in Kupp, get the ball out as quick as possible against the blitz, play hot against the blitz and just throw the ball short and try to get some screens going and, mix in the run a little bit and try to attack the Vikings that way. I just don't think it's going to be consistent. It might work early in the game, but I just don't see it lasting. I feel like the Vikings are going to get blitzed by the Rams. We saw the Rams heavily attack the Raiders through the blitz, which I felt was the best part of their game against the Raiders. They were blitzing, they were getting after Gardner Minshew, and they were creating big, impactful defensive turnovers and big plays. But we saw the Vikings handle the blitz against the Lions very, very well, actually block up everything very, very well. It was the sneaky Lions secondary actually playing tight coverage a majority of the game, which resulted in, I think, a couple of stops that maybe didn't allow the Vikings to come through with a win there. So I don't see how the Rams defense consistently slows down the Vikings. And I feel like the Vikings, even if the Rams get a few drives together with Stafford and Kupp, I just don't see it being consistent. I feel like the Vikings will outlast them. They're more talented on the line of scrimmage. They're a better team on both sides of the ball. And the coaching is very familiar with each other. O'Connell and McVay come from the same school, O'Connell being a disciple of Sean McVay, and having Brian Flores there, a guy that has always studied and performed well defensively against Sean McVay offenses. So this is not a Ben Johnson matchup where he has proven in the past. They don't have that Lions O-line. The Rams do not have that O-line. So I think the Vikings win this game. I think they go on the road and They prove they're the better team. I think the Rams will give them a fight early. I just don't think it will last. So my pick will be the Vikings -3 for the spread, and obviously the Vikings will walk into LA and win the game. I am not scared of the home dog in this one. Let's check out what people are betting for this game. Let me know who you're picking for this game, guys. We've got the Vikings and the Rams here on Outlier. Let me actually zoom in a little bit here. Okay, there we go. So we have 91% of the bets on the money line for the Vikings and 99% of the money. That is outrageous. The spread, 83% of the bets and 87% of the money, despite the spread only being -3, which is interesting. The over, 59% of the bets and 58% of the money. The over is 47.5. If I were to bet this, I would actually take the primetime under here, 47.5. Because I do think the Rams offense is going to struggle a little bit more than people do think. Taking a look at some of the metrics here, Vikings 6th scoring offense against the 24th scoring defense, flipping it. Vikings are also 6th defensively against the 24th. Is that correct? Holy smokes. Is that the exact same stat? That's crazy, bro. 16th defense versus 24th offense, and then 16th or 6th offense against this 20. That's insane. I don't know how many times I've seen that. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, that's something that you learn something new every day, I guess. 6th versus 24. 6th versus 24. All right, so that's a pretty big mismatch, but I guess that some people don't think so. All right, let's get to the next game. That's Thursday Night Football. Big Al does have the Vikings 24-17. Minnesota wins and covers. I could see that. Big Al says 5 teams went up 10-0 and wound up losing. Rob says Vikings win, but take the points. Possible letdown game, says Rob. I don't think it's a letdown because they just lost to the Lions. I don't see how it's a letdown game after losing to the Lions. Stephanie says 27 for the Vikings, 20 for the Rams. All right, let's get to Sunday. The New Orleans Saints at the Los Angeles Chargers. I do believe this is actually an afternoon game. I don't really have the games in order, but we're just going to work with what I have. So the Chargers are -7.5. This is a 4 p.m. Eastern start. The Chargers are at home facing off against one of the worst teams in the NFL. I think I ranked the Saints 30th in my power rankings. Derek Carr will not be playing. Rashid Shaheed is out for the season. Their offensive line is still in shambles. Alvin Kamara, we actually learned, has been playing with a broken hand of some sort. Chris Olave, I do think, will be back because he did suffer a concussion last week, but he's had 10 days to get better, so I do think he should be back. The defense of the Saints has been absolutely atrocious lately. But that being said, the Chargers failed to win on the road against Arizona. This is a short week for the Chargers as opposed to the Saints having extended rest because the Saints were playing on Thursday. The Chargers were playing on Monday. So it's not exactly an ideal spot, but the Chargers are at home with one of the worst home field advantage, if not the worst home field advantage in the league. That being said, though, Chargers defense has been pretty good. They could have Joey Bosa back this week. The offense of the Chargers is very run heavy. I do think they should be able to run the ball in this game a little bit better than they did against Arizona, which was shockingly not too efficient. I also thought Herbert has played better the last couple of games, but his receivers have let him down consistently. The Saints, the one thing I can't really track with them is why their defense is playing so bad. Like, their scheme, I feel like they've been way too zone-oriented, and they've been getting shredded. And if that's the case, again, I feel like they'll get shredded by a smart and savvy quarterback that knows where to go with the ball, and that is Justin Herbert. I do think the Chargers defense has proven to be pretty darn solid, and against rather Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener or whoever they're starting, I don't even really know at this point. I don't know if they've announced it yet. I don't think the Saints are going to move the ball. I mean, Rattler looked absolutely atrocious against the Denver Broncos, and this is a similar caliber defense, the Chargers, that have a good pass rush led by Khalil Mack and one of the strongest run Ds in the NFL. So I don't see Clint Kubiak and Alvin Kamara getting this run game going either. I think this one is quite simple. I'm not exactly sure I'm going to bet it just because I don't know if I trust the Chargers to cover 7.5 because the Chargers just don't have an offense. that is explosive enough for me to like bet it, but I will pick the Chargers to cover, and I will pick the Chargers to win. You might be able to get this at 7 also. Like, look, if you do want to bet this and you do feel confident about the Chargers scoring enough points, I would maybe lay the 7, but 7.5 does get a little bit tricky there. So yeah, this one is in consideration for a best bet. I don't know if I have enough confidence in the spot for the Chargers, the offense of the Chargers, the overall outlook of their scoring ability. But I do think their defense will dominate this matchup. I'm pretty confident about that. Okay, so let's check out the outlier stats. We've got 9% of the bets on the money line for the Saints, 91 on the Chargers, 24% of the money on the Saints, 76% of the money on the Chargers, 60% of the bets on the spread on the Saints, and 68% of the money on the Saints. The over is getting 86% of the bets and 87% of the money at over 40.5. I would lean towards the under again. Like, I don't really see why we're really betting the over here. It's 40.5. It's not too low. I don't know. Let's see the trends. So the trends for the Chargers are the under. I mean, the Chargers have played the under 8 games in a row dating back to last season. So if you want to play into the current incarnation of the Chargers, that might be the play. The under 40.5. Okay, let's get back to the chat. Let's see who people are picking this week on this game. Guys, if you haven't already, Gronk spiked the like button. It helps more people find this video, more people find my picks, and more people find the bottom line view. So if you don't want to be selfish and you want to give out some love to the world, Gronk spike the like button. It is free. Big Al says Chargers 21, Saints 13. Los Angeles wins and covers. I have the game at 7. Rob says Dennis Allen is unfit to be a head coach. Mickey Loomis is a terrible general manager. Stephanie's got the Chargers in a borderline blowout, 28-10. So Stephanie is confident, and Stephanie's been hot picking these games. All right, next up, the Green Bay Packers. Fresh off a victory at home over the Houston Texans. In a game that I think people are going to be hesitant about the Packers because they barely beat a beat-up Texans team. But if you dive deeper and actually watch the game, I felt like they mostly dominated the game. There were a couple of drives the Texans were able to run the ball, but they really did shut down the Texans through the air. And they also were able to create some explosives through the air as well. Their run game was solid enough, but the Texans did give them fits with their pass rush. So looking at Jacksonville, they did have their best week of the year, their best performance, which I don't think is any sort of congratulations because it was against the New England Patriots. But their offense did look good, which would be the concern about laying the points with the Packers, is that Jacksonville at home, coming back from a win that gains confidence and momentum, and perhaps they buy into their coaching a little bit more here with Doug Peterson, that at home now, maybe they score some points on the Packers. They're able to move the ball a little bit. Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas is legit right now. Tank Bigsby is playing unreal. Evan Ingram is solid, right? They've got enough weapons to make this a little bit of a shootout. I think the biggest mismatch in this game is the Packers receiving core against Jacksonville's secondary. Tyson Campbell is back, and he's a huge improvement for this team. So he will probably be covering rather Dobbs or Watson on the outside a majority of the time, potentially a little bit of Wicks. But I feel like Jaden Reed could absolutely go nuclear in this game as long as he's healthy. And I also think Kraft could have some success. We saw young Drake May shred the Jags for the first half of the game, and a lot of it using play action. I think that is also a good antidote or a nice little timbit, so to speak, for the Packers to be able to look at that film and be like, okay, we've got Drake May, play action, throwing down the field. I think Jordan Love can replicate that. I'm actually not convinced Jordan Love is better than Drake May. I'm just going to throw that out there. But he does have a much better offensive line. and a much better receiving core. And I do think the Packers are going to probably put up close to 30 points. So the question is like, is Jacksonville going to be able to get close to that and cover a 4? I just think this number's a little short. I think Jacksonville is still overrated to a certain degree. I don't think the win against the Patriots really helped them. I don't think if the Packers get up 10-0, they're conceding like 24 straight points like the Patriots did. The Packers defense is underrated at this point. I think their defensive line has been solid against the run. I think their pass rush is much better than the Patriots. And Jair is playing unreal. Also, look out for the young kid Williams at safety. He's been playing very well. McKinney's been playing very well. The offensive line of Jacksonville still is not convincing to me. And I feel like with the blitzing schemes that the Packers were able to get after the Texans and CJ Stroud, I think they could find similar success against Trevor Lawrence, who likes to hold on to the ball a little bit too long for my liking. So, I like the Packers. I think they'll win and cover. Let's check out I think the Packers might be a best bet, just to throw that out there as well. They're definitely in consideration. Let's check out what outliers. I'm kind of feel like this is going to be a game that the so-called sharps are going to like Jacksonville for no apparent reason, but they've also liked Jacksonville the entire season. So 95% of the bets are on the Packers. 97% of the money is also on the Packers on the money line. Now, in terms of the spread, there's a little bit more money on Jacksonville, 38%, but 88% of the bets are on the Packers. Now, the over is seeing 72% of the bets and 77% of the money. I would agree with the over in this game. I think the 49.5 is the way to lean the over. I definitely feel like you could see the Packers get 30 plus, and I think there's a world where Jacksonville scores around 20 to 24. So, yeah, I think Packers win, Packers cover 4.5. Doesn't really matter to me. I'm not believing in Jacksonville after a win against the Patriots. Patriots blow, bro. We've talked about this already. I'm done with the Patriots. I'm done with the Patriots. All right, next up, we've got the Baltimore Ravens at Jameis Winston, baby. Let's go. Jameis. I might have to pick the Browns just because Jameis is finally in the game, bro. Let's go. We got the funniest quarterback in the NFL starting once again. The clip of the year. Jameis Winston. After the game about Deshaun Watson. He sees how he works, bro. He sees how he puts in the time. He was taught never to not love another human. I love Jameis, bro. And I think the Browns can cover this. I don't think they're going to win, but I do think that they can cover this. I definitely think there's a chance. The Browns defense is fully healthy right now. And the Browns defense, the last couple of weeks, I mean, they completely shut down the Eagles for the most part. They completely shut down the Bengals for the most part. They actually only allowed 14 points and a kick return. The Browns do kind of... I'm intrigued to watch this matchup because the Browns did beat the Ravens last year once. And the Browns did... I do think they can play the Ravens a little bit differently than other teams because they have good man-to-man corners. They do have a stout defensive line and a good pass rush. And they do have a linebacker in JOK that's very fast. So I feel like they have unique personnel to match up with the Ravens on offense. So I'm really intrigued by this matchup for that side of the ball. I do think, though, it's hard to trust Jameis because on one hand, do I think he's better than Deshaun Watson? And do I think he will have some success throwing the ball because the Ravens secondary is pretty putrid? Yeah, I feel like he can. I mean, Cedric Tillman looked pretty good. David Njoku is a monster. They do have a healthier O-line now, and Nick Chubb is back. So there's more pieces here. And I just think the general thing here for the Browns of being like more motivated, more excited to like play in a football game, like I think that's a real thing because I don't think they wanted to play with Deshaun Watson out there. I don't think there was any inspiration, any motivation. Like I don't think they loved playing with this guy. So Kevin Stefanski can also maybe run a little bit more of his offense. So I think that's definitely a factor. I'm going to lean Browns to cover, but I'm going to take the Ravens to win. It's not a convincing pick on the cover, though. I feel like this is going to come right down to it's probably going to be like a 7-point or to a 10-point win for the Ravens, somewhere in that range. I'd be a little surprised if the Ravens just blew out the Browns. I'd be a little surprised by that because it's a division rival on the road, but it's possible. It depends on Jameis throwing the ball to the other team. It really does depend on that. If he throws the ball to the other team like Baker, then potentially this could get out of hand a little bit, but I'm rooting for Jameis, so we're going to take the 9, but I'm going to go with the Ravens to win. So let's check out the outlier stuff right now. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me live for Week 8 picks. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let's go. 99% of the bets on the money line are on the Ravens. 99% of the money is on the Ravens. 86% of the bets on the spread are on the Ravens. And 69% of the money on the spread is on the Ravens. The over is seeing 89% of the bets and 97% of the money. The over being at 44.5. I would also lean towards the over, although I don't know if it would be a bet. I would lean that way, but I don't know. Jameis, famous Jameis. We'll see how he does. All right. Next up, we've got the New York Jets. Jets. What the heck happened after halftime? What happened to the Jets after the half? Bro, I was like, wow, the Jets are going to win this game. They look great. Aaron Rodgers is slinging it. Breece Hall can't be stopped. And then all of a sudden, nope. The Steelers whooped their candy ass, and Najee Harris looked like Jerome Bettis and friggin' Franco Harris combined out there, man. So, and then all of a sudden, the Russell Wilson's throwing miracle deep shots to George Pickens, and he's just catching it. Like, goodness me. The Jets should smoke the Patriots like they did the first time. Like, on paper, this is a total mismatch. That the Patriots defense sucks. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They don't have a pass rush to speak of. Like, Rodgers should have a good game. He did have his best game of the season against the Patriots in New York on a short week. You do have to wonder, this is the second matchup between these two teams already, and the Patriots will have the film of a relatively simplistic Jets offense. So will they have more answers to the test this time? Perhaps. But the Jets could probably just hand the ball off to Breece Hall 20 times and probably get 6 yards a clip. New York's defense has been really disappointing, and I think that you can run on them, but if you've watched the Patriots lately, they can't run the ball. Like, they couldn't run the ball at all against Jacksonville. Ever since Drake May became the starter, they can't run the ball. They couldn't run the ball against the Texans. They couldn't run the ball against Jacksonville. Will they be able to run the ball against the Jets? Maybe. We'll see. That being said, Drake May is a stud, so I wouldn't be shocked if somehow he made this game competitive because he's throwing lasers out there and he's scrambling and he's way better than Jacoby Brissett. So I don't think the Jets will just be able to blitz the entire game like they did the first time. The Patriots do have some pretty big injuries, as Salvador is pointing out in the chat. We'll have to see how those go. Demario Douglas should be full go, though. I do think the Jets are getting their corners back, all of them, which helps. I think DJ Reed was out on Sunday night, so that would help. I also think that the Jets, some of their weaknesses, like their run defense and like their O-line pass protection at times, but mostly just Rodgers panicking in the pocket, I feel like those two things are kind of nullified by the Patriots because they can't run and they can't rush the passer. So I feel like the Jets are just like a team that they can actually play to their strengths in this game. They can have balance on offense. Rodgers can get the ball out quick and attack the middle of the field against terrible linebackers who can't run. And it's all going to be on a rookie's shoulder to carry this team. If the Patriots win, Drake May is the best quarterback in the league. I'm going with the Jets. -7, Jets to win. I might have to bet it. I don't want to. The other thing to factor in here is the Jets, like, bro, this team has so much pressure. Like, they brought in Hassan Reddick. They traded for Devontae Adams. Devontae's going to have another week of practice. Like, the Patriots, their coach called them soft. They hate their coach. Like, they're a disaster of a franchise. The Jets, like, literally need to win or everybody is going to get fired. Like, literally everybody is going to get fired. Aaron Rodgers is going to go on a tirade. He's going to start cutting guys in the middle of the game. Like, if they don't win this game, they're absolutely screwed. So that's something to consider here for the Jets. This is their season. If they lose, they're absolutely toast, fried, cooked, whatever you want to call it. So let's take a look at who people are betting in this game. The 89% of the bets on the money line for the Jets, 93% of the money on the Jets. 68% of the bets are on the spread for the Jets, and 78% of the money is on the Jets. So actually more money than bets are on the Jets here. 83% of the bets on the over, 75% of the money on the over. No real trends here on the total. I don't see. I would say for the over, the Jets have been pretty even. Patriots, same sort of thing. For the spread, the Jets have been terrible and the Patriots have been terrible. So these are two terrible teams against the spread. So don't really, factor in that. But somehow the Jets are only one win better than the Patriots this year, and they're laying 7 on the road. But can you really blame the books because the Patriots are just that bad? Singh is listing all his picks right now. Shout out Singh. Chargers 20-17, Packers 27-13, Ravens 27-10, and Jets 23-10. If I had to give a score for this game, I would probably go like Jets 27, Patriots 17, something like that. All right. Next up, we've got the Atlanta Falcons, favored by 2.5 on the road at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one actually kind of scares me because I feel like the Falcons should win this game. They're coming off a pretty devastating loss that I don't think was as bad as the score, but it was a tough loss against Seattle at home in a big, NFC clash. I do feel like Tampa is coming off a devastating loss from the fact that not only did they lose and they were getting blown out at one point against the Ravens at home on Monday night, but they also lost Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and none of them are coming back anytime soon. So the heart and soul of the team is probably Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Those two guys go out, that changes how the team thinks about themselves from a confidence standpoint. I think it changes Baker Mayfield and how good of a quarterback you would evaluate him as. I think it changes their strongest unit because their unit on offense has been top 5, top 6 in the league so far. Their defense is fucking terrible. Excuse my French, but they can't cover a soul. And their run defense has been a little underwhelming compared to years past. They do have the personnel to stop the Falcons here against the run, but Kirk Cousins should be able to just rip them apart through the air. I've never seen a team that just doesn't cover the middle of the field. It's crazy. Like KJ Britt's like the worst linebacker in the league right now, according to PFF. So I guess that's part of the reason. Atlanta's -2.5. I'm leaning Atlanta because I just don't know if Baker will be able to win a shootout without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And this game is likely going to be a shootout because Atlanta's passing game has been on the whole year pretty much since at least week 2. I mean, they've been able to throw the ball to Darnell Mooney, throw the ball to Drake London. Bijan's been getting it going. And Atlanta's defense is pretty bad too, but at least they're healthy. And I don't think their run D is awful. I don't think they really do a good job, like, not giving up explosives. They make you earn it. And I feel like Baker's one of those quarterbacks that when you make him earn it, he's going to make a mistake. Like, eventually he'll make a mistake. So I thought Tampa should have won the first game, though. What scares me here is this is a team that I felt like should have won the first game. They're healthier on defense for the second matchup. They're at home. They're underdogs. Maybe they have a rally game where they rally for Godwin or something like that, but I can't trust it. So I'm going to go with the Falcons to win, the Falcons to cover. Let's check out the betting splits here. Wrong thing, Mitch. There you go. That looks much prettier. The bet, 63% of the money line on the Bucs. Interesting. 62% of the money on the Falcons, though. The spread, 57% of the bets on the spread on the Falcons. So we've got a split. If you want to bet money line, they're going Bucs. But if you want to take the... that's interesting, actually. That's pretty interesting. I don't know if that's... I think I know why, actually, because this number flipped. So that's probably where the stats are coming from. So that might be a lie, just because the Bucs were favored earlier in the week. So that's probably where that stat is coming from. The Bucs were favored because, they played on Monday, so these stats are probably a little bit delayed. But 57% of the bets on the Falcons on the spread and 68% of the money on the Falcons as well. And then the over, 75% of the bets, that makes sense. 66% of the money, 45.5. I would also go with the over, 45.5. I still think the Bucs are going to be able to score. I just don't think it will be... I think in the clutch moments, I think it's going to be way more difficult for them. And I also feel like the Falcons are going to score more because the Bucs defense is ass. Okay. Next up, we've got the Miami Dolphins. Tua. My boy Tua is back. Tyreek said start him in your fantasy lineups this week. Start Tyreek Hill this week. Okay? Tune up the band. Get it going. Their cant is pumped. The Miami Dolphins at the Arizona Cardinals. Or wait, is this the wrong way? No, this is in Miami. I got it reversed. This is in Miami. Miami minus 3.5. Arizona, short week. Going to Miami, who's pumped. Lost a game they should have won. They should have beat the Colts. That was disgusting. I don't want to talk about it. Tyler Huntley got hurt in the middle of the game. Then they missed a field goal. Then they fumbled. I don't want to talk about it. Okay? One thing, though, Miami's pass defense. If you actually check your fantasy leagues, the number one team against quarterbacks this year is the Miami Dolphins. Yep. Their pass defense has been good. Their run defense, though, a little suspect. I could see James Conner having a pretty good day, as well as Kyler Murray with his legs having a pretty good day. Marvin Harrison Jr., when he's wide open, he doesn't get the ball, but when he's in double coverage, he gets thrown the ball, so that's interesting. Trey McBride, pretty good at football. The Chamber, Dortch, had a touchdown. Wilson was a little quiet on Monday night. I think the Cardinals' offense is going to be inconsistent in this game. I could see them hitting some explosives with Kyler running and James Conner running. I think that could set up some things. I think McBride could make some big plays. But I'm not convinced by the Cardinals' passing attack. They just have not been convincing all year. Defensively, the Cardinals are without their best defensive player, arguably, or like not their best, but like one of their best. Dennis Gardeck, I think, is out for the season. He led their team in sacks last year, and he's a highly impactful player for them, plays with a lot of energy. The Cardinals' defense on paper is pretty ass, but Jonathan Gannon is actually doing a good job with what he has there. That being said, he's taking on Miami at full strength, who hasn't really been able to reveal their offense this year because they only played like 1.5 games with Tua. Jonnu Smith has become a bigger part of this offense with Tyler Huntley. I do wonder how much that will transfer with Tua. but he became kind of their third target in the passing game these last couple of weeks. They want to get Tyreek going. They want to get Waddle going. I think Tua is the antidote for that. The O-line is healthy in Miami, which is a big deal, and they've been starting to run the ball a bit better. I thought they ran the ball against the Colts pretty well. I do think the Dolphins are the significantly better team here, and they're at home. But I do worry about Kyler Murray in a shootout, potential shootout here. I'm going to lean towards Miami to win and Miami to cover. I do think their defense has impressed me, which makes me feel confident about this pick. Even at 2-4, this is kind of a must-win for Miami. So as long as Tua makes it through the whole game, I think they win this game. Miami has been hitting 9 out of 10 on the under at 45.5. That's something to consider. They've actually become a better defensive team than I think many people would realize. Let's just take a look at the betting splits. So the Dolphins minus 3.5. I'm going to go Dolphins to win, Dolphins to cover. 60% of the bets on the money line. 80% of the money is on the Cardinals on the money line, though. I don't know if that was previous to Tua being activated or not, though. That's something to keep in mind. 69% of the bets on the spread are on the Cardinals. 64% of the money on the Cardinals. This spread definitely moved because of Tua. There's no question. 70% of the over bets on the game, and then 49% of the money is on the over. So actually more money on the under, but more bets on the over. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I like the Dolphins here. I actually like them more than I think I thought I did. So that's an interesting one. Let me know who you guys are picking there. We've got 90 people in the chat. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. And subscribe if you haven't already. Check out Patreon for all my bets every week. Become a member if you want to support ya guy, ya boy. All right, next up. We got the Colts at the Houston Texans. Texans are favored by 5 now, but I put 6 on the graphic. The spread has gone down a little bit at 5. We're going to use 5 as the number. I feel like this one's tough because on one hand, I want to fade the Colts because I feel the Colts are not a good team. And I feel like their quarterback sucks. Like underline, bold, sucks, italics, sucks. Anthony Richardson is ass. But the Houston Texans have kind of struggled with the Shane Steichen Colts. The first game was way closer than it should have been. It was in Indy, though. And the Texans were trying to figure out who they were. They were also or who they are, I should say. They're also, I feel like, not as healthy as that game. The Texans are pretty beat up defensively. I do wonder some of their linebackers will be back. If I think Lassiter at corner will be back, which will help. But also the Colts do have injuries as well. On Wednesday, Michael Pittman, Ryan Kelly, Josh Downs all did not practice. They played on Sunday, though, so that would indicate maybe they play again this Sunday. So just look out for the injury reports. Very influential game according to injuries here. I kind of want to pick the Texans in a bounce-back spot at home against a team that I thought they should have blown out the first time when you go back and watch that game. But I also feel like I kind of don't want to bet against Shane Steichen as the dog here against a team that he's played really close as a coach. So it's a tough one. I will not be betting this. But at 5, I would probably go with the Texans to win and to cover. Jonathan Taylor could be back. That's a big deal. But Joe Mixon has been a big deal for the Texans. And I think the Texans will be able to run the ball with Joe Mixon. I think that against this secondary and against this defense. So the Packers had a lot of success blitzing against the Texans, but one thing that Gus Bradley doesn't do is blitz. And CJ Stroud has played against this defense numerous times, and he's played well in every game that he's played against them. I think Diggs could once again have a big game against the Colts, and Tank Dell could have a bit better of a game than he did, previously against the Packers. One of the things that I thought was shocking about the Packers game was how well the Packers covered the Texans, and they really needed Nico Collins. Nico Collins made some key plays in the first matchup against the Colts, but I don't necessarily feel like receivers are necessarily like a huge thing. I think it's more on the quarterback when you play this defense. And then defensively, I like the Texans pass rush, and I like the Texans to be able to just make Anthony Richardson inaccurate. I mean, he had like 8 completions against them the first time they played. I don't think Richardson's going to pass the ball very efficiently, so they're going to have to run the ball, and they might be able to run it a little bit, but I just don't see where the Colts have like consistent offensive success. Maybe through Richardson running himself. I just don't trust Richardson. That's really what it comes down to. I'm trusting the Texans in a bit of a bounce back game at home versus a team that I just don't like their quarterback. So that's kind of what it comes down to. But this is not bettable for me, as it's, I think, a respectable number and an opponent that has played the Texans pretty well in the past. Next up, let's actually check let's check this. Thank you guys for joining. We have over 100 people now in the chat. Dope. Thank you for tuning in. Let's check out what people are betting for this game. And guys, don't forget that if you do want to check out OUTLIER, there's some very useful information on here, including like pretty much every stat that you could ever want. There's insights that I use for my prop bets, as well as everything else. And you can also basically bet on OUTLIER from any book that you're signed up to. That being said, let's take a look at it. Link is in the description if you guys do want to sign up. Colts, 6% of the bets on the money line and 2% of the money. So a lot of money coming in on the Texans to win the game. 77% of the bets for the Texans on the spread and 85% of the money on the Texans. And then you look at the over, 76% of the bets, 64% of the money. The over, I don't know. DeForest Buckner is back for the Colts, so that's also pretty big. But this number is actually at 4.5, so that's interesting. So like I said, it was at 6, went to 5, might be at 4.5. Continues to go down. But this is a game that I think is going to be dictated by the injury report to see what happens. The over does, just based on last time they played, it did go over, but that was because the Colts scored like right at the end. So I'm not exactly sure about that one. Okay, next game. We've got who? The Philadelphia Eagles. Big Al's Eagles. Big Al's also got the Dolphins 27 to the Cardinals 19. Miami wins and covers. Rob says Texans win and cover. Can't trust Richardson. Big Al's also got Falcons 27-17 over the Bucs. Wow, only 17 for the Bucs. Durkant likes the Texans 31-17. Stephanie thinks the Dolphins will win. Stephanie likes the Texans to win. Okay. EAGLES versus Burrow in Cincinnati. Welcome to the jungle. We like fun and games. We got everything you want. This is a must-win game for the Bengals. They got to win this game, Big Al. So, Saquon Barkley, you better bring it this week. I know you're not playing your former team, but you better bring it this week, okay? Because they're going to need you. If the Eagles win this game, it's because of Saquon Barkley. Because Jalen Hurts still sucks. He's awful. He holds on the ball too long. He runs around in circles, and he chucks the ball up on 4th and 3 to A.J. Brown. If you guys want to predict a play call on 4th down by the Eagles in 4th and 2+, just guess that Jalen Hurts is going to throw the ball as long as he can to A.J. Brown. That's all he does, okay? Now, the Eagles, we talked about it last week. They've always played the Giants well. Okay? I don't know if the Eagles are really that good because the week before, I thought they were pretty overrated, and they barely beat the Browns. That being said, the Bengals recently have not been very impressive, especially in terms of their offense. They didn't perform that well against the Browns, and it was pretty much the same sort of game the Eagles played, but that was a divisional opponent, and it was on the road, and the Bengals have also failed to beat the Browns consistently in Cleveland. Like, I don't think Burrow ever beat them until that game. I could be mistaken. And then the previous week, the Giants, who both these teams have played. So I thought the Giants actually matched up pretty well with the Bengals, but the Eagles were able to take advantage of the left tackle, Andrew Thomas. We'll talk about that with the Giants a little bit later. Will they be able to do that this week? Orlando Brown did get banged up in the previous game against Cleveland, but he did practice on Wednesday, so that's a good sign. He's actually been a top 3 tackle in the NFL, according to PFF this year. He's been their best lineman by far, so that's a huge, huge one. I do think the Eagles' defense is overrated right now. I think they've been playing some pretty weak offenses, and they've been able to take advantage of that. I think that Burrow can throw the ball here, especially at home, and I do think that they have mismatches on the outside. I'm not a believer in the safeties of the Eagles, and I don't love their linebackers either. And I do think Burrow can throw the ball pretty consistently. I also love what I've seen from Chase Brown, so I do think the Bengals are going to be able to move the ball pretty well in this game. The one thing that I think would change that is if Orlando Brown gets hurt, or like if he's just out of this game, which would then maybe allow the Eagles pass rush that's been playing better lately to be able to get to Burrow more frequently, which would change the prospect of this game. Because I think Ford is the next man up for the Bengals, and he's not exactly the greatest. On the other side of the ball, the Bengals sneakily rank in the top 12 in yards per attempt in passing and rushing. They're 4th in pass defense against yards per attempt, and they're 12th in run defense in yards per attempt. Last week, the Eagles played the Giants, who were 32nd in run defense and yards per attempt. So they go from one extreme to a defense that's actually been playing well against the run in the last couple of weeks. A defense that played well against Nick Chubb, played well against the Giants, played actually pretty well against Derrick Henry, considering what Derrick Henry's been doing this year. So I do think the Bengals have been improving on defense overall. And I think it's going to come down to the outside. I think it's going to come down to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Can they make some plays down the field? And can the Eagles be successful on first down to allow the no left tackle Jordan Mailata offensive line to be able to protect Hurts? So pretty much what this comes down to is I think it's going to be a close game, and I could see either of these teams winning. I think, like I said, if the Eagles are able to just get like good gains on first down and help out Jalen Hurts and their O-line in second and third down and kind of wear down the Bengals, kind of like the Commanders did, and then they can hit their shots on the outside, I think it's possible. But just the way Jalen Hurts is playing against the way that Joe Burrow has played this year, and then you kind of think about like the Bengals, the 2 top teams in the NFL in my power rankings are the Chiefs and the Ravens. And the Bengals should have beat both teams. Like, I think most people would concede that. So I think the Bengals should win this game. They're at home. They're short favorites. They need the game more. And I do think Trey Hendrickson can get to Jalen Hurts against a backup left tackle. So I lean towards the Bengals. I'm not like super confident about it because I do think the Eagles defense has been playing better, and I kind of wonder like how real that is. And I also just have a lot of respect for A.J. Brown, potentially making some big plays here. But the Eagles' offense looks more disjointed to me. I'm not convinced by their defense. And I do believe the Bengals are a team that always play good against good teams. They always get up and play well against good teams. You look at Burrow's record, against the spread, against good teams, and he always comes to play. So for me, I'm going to take the Bengals to win and to cover. They just need this game. I do still see them as a wild card team this year. They're probably not going to win the division because of how good the Ravens have been, but I do still think they're a wild card team, and I think that's by evidence of what they've done this year. The games that they've lost to legit opponents, and they've lost barely, and they probably could have won a couple of them. So looking at the information here, we've got 53% of the bets on the money line being the Bengals, 62% of the money on the Eagles, 68% of the bets on the spread for the Eagles, and 73% of the money on the Eagles. Over 74% and 77% of the money. I would lean towards the over, but with the way that both of the defenses have been trending, it is a little bit more dicey for me. Like, I feel like the Eagles and Bengals have both been getting better on defense as of late. I think the Eagles' offense has been a little bit more inconsistent. But the Bengals, kind of strangely as well, have been not playing their best offense the last 2 weeks. So it's a really weird matchup. I think we're going to learn about both these teams in this game, and it's potentially a huge game for Cincinnati. If they lose this game, they might not be able to come back from it, but who knows? Big Alice says, we historically struggle against the Bengals in general. Salvador says, okay, he changed my mind. I forgot the Giants were without Andrew Thomas, so that explains why the Eagles had their way with the Giants. It is a big factor. I mean, the Giants legitimately could not block the Eagles. It was a really big problem for them. Okay. Let's get this off the screen. There you go. All right. So I've got the Bengals here. I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles won, though. Next up, the Tennessee Titans at the Detroit Lions. Detroit is favored by 11.5 at home, which is a pretty crazy number. I think this is the highest spread of the season, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen one higher than this. I'm going to keep it brief. I think the Lions win. I think the Lions cover. I think even if the Titans perform well early in the game, they'll eventually give a little bit of leeway, let's say, to their victory, a little bit of margin to their victory in the second half. Now, a couple big factors that have been happening lately for the Titans. This week, they've been sellers. So they traded DeAndre Hopkins. Not that DeAndre Hopkins is any good, but he's a veteran name that a lot of players respect. And the fact that he got traded, it just feels like that's a big downer for the entire team. It's a mental thing. Second, Ernest Jones got traded for Jerome Baker. Ernest Jones was acquired for Tennessee and now traded shortly after. That being said, Ernest Jones is a very good run defender, and Tennessee has been excellent against the run this year. And that changes, I think, a matchup a little bit, because I felt like maybe with Ernest Jones, they would be respectable against Detroit's run game, which is, of course, the strength of their team. But without Ernest Jones, it might not be quite as good. Also, we've heard about Harold Landry maybe being traded to some team as well. That's not good. Those things aren't good for your team. Detroit is a well-oiled machine on offense. Is there a chance they have a little bit of a letdown game after a highly emotional big win where Dan Campbell lost his shit in the locker room after beating the Vikings? Yeah, it's possible, but it is at home. And Detroit's defense, I think, has a little bit of a point to prove here. I'm a little concerned about their pass rush right now, but I do think this is the type of offense that you can get away with blitzing and playing man on the outside and not really have to deal with the consequences. Because if it's Mason Rudolph or Will Levis, both of them are going to make mistakes. And the O-line of the Titans is not very good. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball in Detroit, which I think is going to put them in second and long, third and long situations. It's just not a good matchup there. So I think Detroit wins. I think Detroit covers. They're arguably the best team in their conference. I think they show that superiority in this game. I do think Tennessee is like the worst team that no one talks about, like in a negative way. Like everyone talks about Carolina, everyone talks about New England. People have talked about the Saints, the Browns. You look at all the teams that are like at the bottom of the barrel. For whatever reason, Tennessee sitting at 1-6, like nobody talks about them. So yeah, but Detroit to win, Detroit to cover. I'm going to skip the stats on this one. Next up, we've got the Buffalo Bills at the Seattle Seahawks. I was, of course, in Seattle against San Francisco 2 weeks ago, and I saw all the flaws of this football team. They were able to bounce back against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. And what I feel like Seattle has been so far this year is a team that can beat teams that they're about the same level as or a little bit worse than, or maybe on the same level. I feel like Seattle is... Sorry, I said that wrong. So Seattle can beat teams they're better than, or Seattle can beat teams that they're the same level or maybe a little bit worse on a neutral field. But it feels like whenever they've played more talented teams or teams that are not on their level, they're above their level, from that standpoint, they seem to struggle. So I look at Seattle as an interesting case this week because This is the healthiest they've been in a while defensively. They added Roy Robertson Harris in a trade. They just traded for Ernest Jones at linebacker to swap out for Jerome Baker. We could see Reek Woolen come back. Byron Murphy is back. Last week, he played well. They do have pretty much most of their D-line. So that is big. Also, their offense, DK Metcalf does have a sprained MCL. I would actually lean towards him not playing if it were me, just based on that injury. But it hasn't been ruled out that DK Metcalf won't play, but he's one of the best receivers in the league, so that's obviously highly impactful. On top of that, Seattle does get a lot of respect for their home field, but I honestly feel like they have not been as good at home as people think. Like, they got slaughtered by the Giants and the Niners this year at home, and they kind of let a rookie quarterback in his first ever start move the ball at the end of the game as well. They've struggled against the run all year, and I kind of feel like Buffalo is a team that when they can run the ball, they pretty much can beat any team in the NFL. But when they can't run the ball, it hasn't been the same story. I think Buffalo has had the biggest struggle when they are not able to run the ball but that's also because they didn't have weapons before, but now they have Amari Cooper, so maybe that isn't as big of a deal now. But I think they'll be able to run it against Seattle because Seattle isn't good against the run. I mean, the Niners had like 200 yards rushing against them. The Giants ran on them with Tracy for like over 130 for him or something like that. That was with some of the injuries, but Bijan Robinson last week ran the ball well. And even in an Atlanta loss. I do think Buffalo, the one concern for them defensively would be their run defense. I do think Kenneth Walker might be able to hit some runs here. But the thing about Seattle is their O-line is not very good. And Buffalo does have a good pass rush, in my opinion. And I do feel like Seattle is not an overpowering running game. They kind of just rely on Kenneth Walker to make like 3 people miss it every run they have. That's why I think he's one of the best running backs in the league. But they don't have a great running scheme. They mostly run out of the gun, or like without, a power formation, I formation. It's very like college-y. I don't really love their rushing attack. And then their passing game is pretty much spread and shred, but I feel like those are the teams that Buffalo actually does well against because they have good corners and they have a good pass defense and they have a good scheme defensively in pass coverage. So especially without DK, I kind of feel like Geno's not going to have his best day here. So I like the Bills quite a bit in this matchup on paper. I've heard it might rain, which could be a factor. But then if it does rain, the team that I feel like will run the ball better is Buffalo. And they also have a guy that can run it himself in Allen as opposed to Geno, who's not a runner. So I feel like if it does rain, I feel like Allen could just maybe run the ball 10 times himself. And they could also attack you that way. So I just think Buffalo's on a clearly different tier from Seattle. Would I be shocked if an East Coast team went to the West Coast to Seattle and lost? It wouldn't be absolutely shocking, but given the inconsistencies of Seattle's O-line, given their inconsistencies of their run defense, given that Allen has really not turned it over at all this year, I think I've got to go with the Bills here. So the Bills -3, the Bills to cover. I'm pretty confident in that one. I like the football matchup for Buffalo here. Let's actually take a look at the bets here. I'm curious on this one, actually. Quite a bit. Let's check it out. Okay. Where is Buffalo? Buffalo's 5-2, Seattle's 4-3. 83% of the bets on the money line are on Buffalo. 85% of the money is on Buffalo. For the spread, 75% of the money on Buffalo, 62% of the bets. 76% of the bets on the over, 92% of the money on the over. Big Al's got the Bills 30-23. Singh's got the Bills 27-24. Durkant says it'll be a little bit closer, 30-26 Bills. Salvador says that DK Sprained MCL, doubt he makes it back. All right. All right, Salvador, what do you got for me, bro? Salvador, what's your best bet, bro? Give the people what they want. Okay, next up. Where were we? We did that one. Okay. Chicago Bears at the Washington Commanders. Bears -1.5 to -2.5 to -3 at some places. Let me check that live for you guys so that I give you a good number here. I want to say it's at -2.5 right now. But let me check. No, that's the Bills game. -2.5. Okay, so we'll say the spread's -2.5. So this one's tricky. I'm not going to be betting this game. The Bears are coming off a bye. I much prefer the Bears defense. The Commanders, I feel like, have been playing better than my expectation all year. Marcus Mariota is likely to start at quarterback, which is why the spread is what it is. But I actually think Marcus Mariota looked fantastic against the Panthers. That being said, it was against the Panthers. I actually feel like people are overrating the impact of Jaden Daniels in this offense because the offense is so screen, yards after catch oriented. I think a lot of it is based on what they're doing from a play calling standpoint, how they're running the ball. It's setting up Daniels for a lot of success. So I do kind of fade that narrative of Jaden Daniels being some MVP caliber player. That being said, the Bears, like when you just think about this matchup, they've got the better defense. Their pass defense is really good. Their run defense is okay. Their offense does have mismatches at receiver against the Washington secondary. Caleb has been playing much better lately, and they had a bye. So I do think Chicago, on paper, it feels like they should win. But I also feel like the Commanders are the much better coach team overall. Like, I think Dan Quinn has done an admirable job with this Commander defense. But, and Shane Waldron gives me questions about Chicago. Chicago's also played a really weak schedule lately, but they've also been improving at the same time. So that's why it's so tricky. I think there's just too many questions to really handicap this game. I lean towards the Bears, but I don't feel very confident about it. I lean towards it. Yeah. I think they're the overall, more balanced team, and being that Jaden Daniels isn't playing, I feel like I have to kind of lean towards Chicago because I don't really 100% know what Washington's going to look like. But they are getting 2.5 at home against a pretty average team, maybe a slightly above average team. So it's tricky. It's really tricky. Let's check out what people are betting here. I think that the numbers might be irrelevant, though, so I don't even know if I should show you. But the total's at 43.5. And the Commanders have been an over team 8 out of their last 10. And the Bears have been an under team 7 out of their last 10. So who will win on that front? I would lean towards the over 43.5 personally. That might actually be the bet in this game, the over. Okay, next. Carolina at the Denver Broncos. Let's not spend time on Bryce Young. He's the worst quarterback I've ever seen. Denver. The Carolina Panthers are so bad that Bo Nix is laying 10 points in an NFL game. Did you guys see Bo Nix throw the ball on Thursday night? There were 2 guys open, and he missed both of them. That was probably my favorite play. Or maybe the other plays where he runs around from one sideline to the other sideline, and then he runs for a yard. Those are also my favorite. But Denver has had 10 days to prepare for the worst defense I've ever seen. Sean Payton is the coach of the Broncos. Denver's defense is legit, and they're taking on Bryce Young, I'll take Denver to win and to cover. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not picking the I'm done with the Panthers. You couldn't pay me money to bet on the Panthers. You couldn't pay me $110 to bet a $100 bet on the Panthers. I really wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders actually ended up the game closer than I thought against the Rams, although for some reason Antonio Pierce is probably being paid by Vegas at this point, because if you guys noticed, they were down by 8. The spread was 5.5. The man kicked a fucking field goal when he needed a touchdown to tie the game. He kicked a field goal, bro. Something's fishy about that. I don't know. Something feels fishy about that. The man's the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. He's probably going to get fired. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But maybe I am. Okay, I'm just saying. The Raiders' offense is so bad. They can't block. They can't pick up a blitz. They barely can run the ball. This is a massive coaching edge, although I will say that the Raiders' defense does play Mahomes pretty well. Also, Jacoby Myers could be back, which I guess would help. Brock Bowers is a stud. He's probably better than Kelsey at this point, but he can't do everything here. And I think the big factor that people won't talk about is the Raiders have been talking about all offseason how they beat the Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs, low-key, are going to want to layeth the smackdown on the Raiders, because the Raiders have been talking about how they beat the Chiefs all offseason. And the Chiefs have probably been hearing about this. So, despite the Raiders coming out and probably having a superhuman effort, I think the Chiefs should win and should cover, because I don't think the Raiders can move the ball. I just can't imagine them scoring 20 points in any way, shape, or form against this Chiefs defense. And Minshew's probably going to turn it over multiple times because he has been so bad. And on the other side, Mahomes might struggle because he's ass. But I don't know. At least they can run the ball against the Raiders probably. And they'll probably do 18 different screens and reverse plays, and they'll manufacture their 24 points. So I'll take the Chiefs to win. Chiefs to cover. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers. Everybody in my comments is taking the Dallas money line. What am I doing? I'm laying all the money on the line. The 49ers are going to win. The 49ers are going to cover. Durkant's not going to like it. But I'm going to bring it right now, bro. The Cowboys are going to lose by 100. 100 points. The Niners are just going to run the ball 40 times for 7 yards per carry. Chris Connolly might be wide receiver 1 for the 49ers, but I don't even know if Brock Purdy's going to attempt a pass. So I don't really know if it matters. But for real, man, just breaking down the game, the Niners, of course, you've got one of the best run schemers of all time in Kyle Shanahan taking on one of the worst, legitimately one of the worst run defenses in NFL history to this point. Micah Parsons might be back, but it's not like they were stopping the run before he was injured. So I don't know how much it really matters. We'll see. Maybe the Cowboys will just sell out to stop the run completely, and then maybe Brock Purdy will have to make an accurate downfield pass, which he was unable to do against the Chiefs. But that's a side note. I just think the Niners will just overpower them, run them over on offense, and I think that Kyle will scheme up some play action, and they'll probably be able to move the ball for close to 30 points. On the other side, and that's regardless of Ayuk's out for the year, Debo may or may not play, Jawan Jennings may or may not play, but I think he will. Kittle is playing, so that's enough for me. Ricky Pearsall, second game, we'll see if he's more involved here. Defensively, I think this is a great matchup for the Niners because the Cowboys can't run the ball a lick. Their tackles are awful, and they've always played Dak Prescott really well. So you combine those three things, They should have a good game plan. The Niners secondary is actually sneaky pretty good. Lenore has been unreal, and I think he can match up with CD because he plays inside and outside. And Nick Bosa should have 2 sacks. So, yeah, I just think this is a bad matchup for the Cowboys. It has been over the last few years. It is on paper in this game. I think you need to have a balanced attack on offense to attack the Niners properly. And I think that you need a better than vanilla scheme from Mike McCarthy to get it done and only one receiver to throw to. And then on the other side, Dallas's defense is just historically bad against the run. So unless they flip that overnight, I just don't see how they beat the Niners. So despite all the injuries, I think this would be a spot in theory that you would play the Cowboys. I just don't think this is a good matchup at all for Dallas. All right, so I'm taking San Francisco to win and to cover. Big Al's got the Niners 26-10. It's an interesting score. I don't mind that one. Caesar says 50-2. He's a Cowboys fan, by the way. Rob says Niners will cover. Jordan Mason all day. Cowing. He wants to see Cowing. Okay. Durkant says Niners 35-14. Singh's got the Niners 45-0. Okay, that's a little bit much. Chiefs 26-13. Durkant had. I don't know if I said that. Chiefs 23-17 for Big Al. Interesting. So he's got the Raiders covering. Okay. Okay. Let's check out the bets for the Niners game because I'm sure that's a game that you guys will want to bet because it's on Sunday night. So let's check that one out. All right. So 46.5 is the total. I would probably lean. Oh, man. I would probably lean under if I had to bet it, but I don't know. 89% of the bets on the money line for the Niners and 55% of the money on the money line for the Niners. Although there's quite a bit of money on the money line for the Cowboys. Like I said, all the guys in my comments are taking the Cowboys money line. 53% of the bets on the Niners on the spread and 59% of the money is on the Cowboys, which has moved the number from, like 5, 5.5, 6 range all the way down to 4, 3.5. If it's at 3.5, man, that's just crazy to me. I think the Niners beat the Cowboys last year 42-10. I was at the game. Now, the Niners were a better team and they were healthier, but still 76% of the over for the bets, and then 72% of the money is on the over as well. Durkant says Niners are still out of the playoff race. Actually, if they win this week and the Seahawks lose, they're in first place in the NFC West. But that's only facts, and Durkant does not care about facts. Let's finish it off with Monday Night Football. The New York Giants at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh is currently favored by 6.5, somewhere in that range. This one's interesting because, I feel like on one hand, I totally see how the Steelers could run away with this game and win it. But I also feel like 6 points for the Pittsburgh Steelers is just feels like way too many points for the Pittsburgh Steelers because Russell Wilson, the thing that makes this version of the Steelers so hard to bet on, either way, is they have the most voodoo bullshit you'll ever see in your life on special teams and on defense. And then at the same time, Russell Wilson is entirely reliant on throwing the ball 50 yards in the air and his receiver catching it. That's their entire offense. So it's really hard to rely on the Steelers to be able to cover any game, to actually understand how the game is going to go. You know what I mean? Because the Steelers are just one of those teams. We saw them lose to the Cowboys and then decisively beat the Jets. That just doesn't really make sense to me. So though on paper, if you think about it, right, the Steelers have been running the ball well lately. They should be able to run the ball against the Giants. The Giants have the 32nd yards per attempt defense. We brought this up earlier. So they should be able to run the ball. So that should help Russ. Also, it feels like the Giants give up a few big plays in the passing game every game, and Pickens should be able to come down with a couple of them. On the other side, I do think without Andrew Thomas, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, the defensive line of the Steelers should dominate Daniel Jones. He's going to panic under pressure. And I don't really see the Giants running the ball that well. So it's going to be entirely on Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, and the Brian Daboll scheme to figure this out. And maybe it'll be better than it was last week, but have they had enough time to really switch it up? I think the Steelers should win and cover at the end of the day. In the game that I'm imagining, I feel like their defense should dominate. I feel like their offense should get a ground game going. They should be able to get a lead, secure a lead. And I feel like Russ doesn't make mistakes, which I feel confident about. I don't know why the Steelers are always on primetime. And I don't know how every primetime game they play is at home. But hey, I guess so. People really want to watch the Steelers. So shout out to Bodo. Let's check out what people are betting. I'm going to go Steelers to win, Steelers to cover. The total is 36.5, which, again, a 6-point spread on a 36.5 total is pretty outrageous. 98% of the bets on the Steelers, 99% of the money on the Steelers for the money line. 83% of the bets on the Steelers spread, 84% of the money on the Steelers. Keep in mind, this number's been moving up all week because of the Giants' ineptitude on the offensive line lately. 92% on the over. That does make sense to me. That does make sense. I actually do like the over. I know the money is on the under, actually, over 55%. But if I were to bet this, I'd bet, if you're betting the Steelers -6, I'd bet the over. It only really makes sense to me at 36.5. Just because, like, 36.5 is a low number. That's 20-16. So, yeah. Unless they win 20-10, I guess it's possible, but it's just not as likely. All right. There it is. Your NFL Week 8 picks from yours truly. If you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And we'll be back for best bets, hopefully with, once again, another bounce back week. Last week was just so unlucky that our luck is bound to return. Hopefully, I don't pick teams that look like they're going to cover pretty easily, and then they end up losing. So hopefully that happens this week. Salvador says Steelers will cover. Yeah, I think so. Singh says bye Mitch. Big Al says, how did you do last week? I went 10-5. Now I'm 67-40 overall. I don't know if he's asking Miss Jennifer. I think he knows how I did. But you guys can scroll back to the beginning of the video. Big Al's got Steelers 31, Giants 13. Durkant's got 30-20. Singh's got 23-10 for the Steelers. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's Mitch. Peace, guys.